Hello people. Welcome to Total War Warhammer. And I thought we would do a bit of a tutorial since the third game in the series is coming. So I decided to start with SFO and a few mods simply to have to show off.
Of the Everqueen.
So just going to use Tyrion here, and we're going to start from the top going down. To start with the, well, to start with the top, you have the unit size here. This is determining, for example, if it's a large or if it's a infantry model. So, for example, the silver helms, lances here, are large entity size, which will come into play later. You can then see upkeep and the XP. If you hover over the XP bar, you'll see how much XP you have with how much you need for the next rank. Since this is new, you get the hint. Now, going down, we have armor. Armor is how resistant a unit is to missile fire melee attacks, specifically non-armor piercing kinds. And if you look, you can also see this unit has a shield. A shield allows them to have a chance to block missile fire. Not artillery fire or flamethrowers, but missile fire, such as guns, arrows, etc., etc. Anything you would see, like, say, from High Elven archers or Imperial handgunners. You get the gist. However, a shield can be bypassed in a few ways, such as, for example, artillery, as I said before, or simply not shooting them from the front. Okay, so otherwise, armor. Armor, it will reduce non-armor piercing damage. Please note, I only specifically mentioned non-armor piercing, because if we look at Tyrion here, you can see he has flaming attacks. Now, let's just say he went against this Silverhelm, and we're going to ignore the physical resist down here, which I'll go into later. His flaming attacks will not gain him any benefit. Same for any magical attacks. Same for most attacks like that. However, since Tyrion has a lot of armor piercing, which if you hover over the unit card, you'll see he has 150 base weapon damage. And then he has 350 armor piercing weapon damage. The base weapon damage is the only thing affected by armor. This also applies to range units with a missile strength, where they have a non-armor piercing amount. The armor piercing amount will just straight up ignore the armor. So for example, if Tyrion, say, fought something like Silver Helms, most of his damage will just bypass the armor. However, to put it, armor piercing, in turn, is countered by physical resistance, or magical if it's a magical attack, or flaming if it's a flaming attack as well. To go into better detail, you have a few resistant types, which I'm going to get into ahead of time. You have physical, which will reduce any non-magical damage. So, for attack to bypass physical, it has to be magical. And vice versa. If something has magical resistance, you use a physical attack, being something like this here. You see there's no special marker on the melee attack. There's none on the weapon strength or such. This unit just deals normal damage. If you'll clarify any, special thing about their attacks, as there's Tyrion here with his flaming attacks, you'll notice it'll have an icon here. For this case, fire damage has like a little fireball. And, well, if I get a sample here, but no. Pretty much, missile resistance, which is this lead shield down here, kind of like lead broken shield, will only affect missiles, not artillery if I recall right. Fire resistance will of course only affect fire attacks, so for example if Tyrion was fighting Tyrion, he would be doing 25% less damage in total. But no, leadership. is going to be the next thing. Leadership is effectively how likely your unit is to rout. This is very much an important thing in Total War for several reasons. If your unit routs, if I recall right, 3 times, they will just flee. They will fully break. And when they fully break, that means they have no chance of coming back, and thus you have no longer any use of that unit. Leadership is affected by things such as burst damage, and damage they have took within the minute. It's also affected by things like feel, and if the leadership is around 50% or less, they will flee from any units causing tail on the initial impact. I stress initial for the fact it will only be on that initial impact, the initial attack. However, if they'll say cyclo-charging, which is effectively where you pull the unit out of combat after you charge them in, say for like cavalry heal, you can reapply that chance to terrorize them. Terrorizing does not affect that routing chance from before, but it will make them flee, which is a very good thing. Or bad if you're on the receiving end. Anyhow, most living units, when they hit 0 leadership or below, they will just flee. That means they still have a chance to come back. Vary if you have a unit like a hero or a general, or as known in this game, a lord. But the leadership can be boosted by this encourage ability down here, which is, well, as I said before, only lords and such never give it, but there are also specific units, but I'll get into those later. Encourage will boost the leadership of anything near them, and it will take the highest value. So, yeah. Otherwise, going down, we have speed. Speed is how fast the unit moves. However, most units have like an animation cap, where they can only move so fast. If you want to know more, watch one of Legends of Total War's videos. I'm pretty sure he did one on Ratling Gunners, where he showed how fast they could move. Same for dwarves. Then we have melee attack and melee defense. I'm going to cover this in one thing. Melee attack and melee defense are effectively the chance to dodge and the chance to hit, compared to each other. So a higher melee attack will more or less do far better against a lower melee defense. However, using Tyrion's stats, he's more likely to hit somebody with 60 melee defense. However, there are minimum caps and there are also effectively maximum caps. I will note now that if a unit's flanked, this melee defense gets reduced. And with melee attack, it can be reduced by them being more tired, same for melee defense, armor, and so on. Then you have weapon strength. This goes back into armor and such, but to explain. You have damage types, such as flaming, magical, and physical. You also have a few others, but I'm not going to go into those. Well, a few others being base and armor piercing, but you know what I mean. But no. For an attack to be resisted, it has to have one of those traits, as I said before. So a physical attack cannot be magical, and vice versa. However, they can be flaming. So in this case, Tyrion's dealing physical flaming damage, because you see no other thing but flaming. He also is dealing a good deal of armor piercing, you can tell heal. But to put it, otherwise, weapon strength is going to be forced, well, probably not forced, but I'm not very sure how the multipliers work at force. But anyhow, effectively, you go for the resistances, so let's say Tyrion attacked, let's use these White Swords of Clays. He would have to, your damage will be reduced by 5%, and then he's going to have to go for the armor, and anything else. But no. Now we go to charge bonus, which is the last stat on this unit card, besides these little attributes down here, which I'll get to soon, and health, but I'll go into health a little later. Charge bonus. This is the unit's attack and damage when they run a charge. This will say for a bit afterwards, and to explain it in better detail, you will effectively add this bonus 1 for 1 for the same ratio of your weapon strength. So for example, say you have like a 50-50, it would split this 45 in a 50-50. Well, I feel dumb for saying that, but you know what I mean. Otherwise, you'll add this 45 to the melee attack for several seconds. It will be a slowing decay, so it will get weaker over time, which is why people will cycle charge, as I said before, with cavalry, because if you notice, cavalry tends to have a stupidly high charge bonus. So, you can, generally speaking, call most cav in this game shock cav. Otherwise, we go to attributes, which will be cutting over old ground. You have resistances, such as missile resistance, fire resistance, magical resistance, etc., etc. For those. Then you will have resilient of some kind, generally speaking, which will make your race, well, your units immune to a certain type of collision. In this case, all Hyles are immune to the Miss of Egress, which is a special mechanic from, well, Bat Health over there, which I won't get into this video. Then, heroes and such will generally have Encourage. Encourage will provide a boost to leadership for everything near them, and it will take the highest. Then we'll say if they can hide in a forest or not effectively. You have immune to psychology, which means fear and terror will not affect that unit. Also, if a unit has fear and terror, it will not be affected by fear and terror. So, nice to know. Also, I should explain now, fear is simply a leadership debuff, making units rout more on your side if you're facing against it. And then you also have some race-specific stuff, like for example this, Martial Mastery for the High Elves. You also have, Martial Prowess. These are buffs specifically for the High Elves, I should mention. So, in this case, you have type Augment. This means it's going to augment your group in some way. In this case, a very positive thing. Then you have duration constant, which means it's always active, if it's not disabled. Then you have the target, which in this case is self, and then you have disabled if. This is effectively, if it's like this, it will be disabled, which in this case means if the total unit's health reaches below 50%, it will disable this buff. And then you have the effects, which in this case is plus 12 melee defense, and plus 8 melee attack. And then you have the flavor text. To explain a bit better, these can do several things. They could be, for example, a hex, which is like a debuff around that unit. They could be, or on the map. It could be a damage, etc., etc. So, let me just pull up what units. Also, please note, I am playing on SFO, for the simple fact, it makes getting resistances a little easier. So what you see here may not be the same as in the base game. Oh, and I should mention, World Save is a overall damage reduction. It also goes by the name damage resistance or damage reduction. Here you see Feel. Normal you have that. And then we go to Charge Defense. Charge Defense is only when the unit is stationary and facing. And also probably not fighting, but I'm not sure about that just yet. When bracing, this unit will negate any charge bonus of the attacker with export, or with large, it will only negate stuff like horses and cavalry and, well, anything with large anti-scale. Then we go through here, and here's a hex example for anybody wondering. Effectively, you have Aura of Gled, which is for the norm, constant, and this time it says disabled if leadership is broken or unit is dead. This means this is only going to break if that unit is dead. It will also, well, or if they're effectively dead, which is broken, if I recall right. Otherwise, it will apply this debuff, which is rather nasty, in a 15-meter aura around that unit, to any enemies. And if you notice, it says target self, around self. That means it's more centered on that character, or unit. Then we have other stuff here, which is, well, These are more augments, you get the idea. Let's see. Oh, and here's an example of what I mean by damage, resistance, and ward save are the same thing. So effectively, ward save, it will just be a flat reduction to your damage. In this case, a 15% reduction. Okay, let's see. Oh yes, and then we have anti-large and bonus versus large and bonus versus infantry. Bonus versus large will add this similar to charge bonus, but this is permanent against that entity size. So for example, if these guys are fighting anything large, they will gain 35 to their melee attack and 35 to their damage. Which will be rather nasty because they are mainly armor piercing. And now, let's see. Okay, I think that's about it. For the basics, oh yeah, health. I forgot to mention health. Health. This is your unit's health. It's going to be divided among the entities in question, so in this case, Stylian has 5,500 health for himself. So, effectively, you can regenerate this with spells and items. However, it does have a regeneration cap around, if I recall right, 75% of your health. I could be wrong. But it is directly tied to your health. So a unit like these Light Lines of Christ with over 15,000 health would have more than Stylian. But Stylian focuses all that health into a single guy, who, may I add, is rather deadly. Otherwise, I should mention now, hero units and such will, generally speaking, single entity units will have area effect attacks, where they can attack more than one enemy, but they have to run through their melee attack versus their defense. For each of those enemies, I should add. So say Stylian hits 5 guys with one of his attacks. He's going to have to run that check across all those 5 guys before he does damage. Let's see. Okay. And we're about to finish up, people. Okay, I think that's it, actually. So, welcome to the first episode of Basics for Total War Warhammer 101, where we go over defenses, resistances, and basically the unit stat card. Please note, this was made with mods, so what you'll see in the game will probably be different. If you want to know the mods, simply ask in the comments, and I'll post it. Oh, and I should mention one more thing before I forget, which is replenishment. Every unit, when they take damage in battle, so in this case, I'm going to do something kind of stupid here.
Ready for orders. Not possible.
I'm just going to have Stylian attack this, and when we lose, I don't mind as long as he's not wiped out.
Bring me battle.
I did have to say that, but at least this brings us up. Auto-resolve is not your friend! Anyhow, as you can see, the enemy now has damage to their units. These units are effectively now damaged for a few turns, depending on the terrain and such. So for example, you can see there's green here, which is suitable climate. It allows for replenishment. You get the idea. If you're in like a encampment sense, like these people, you can see they're going to be replenishing 11 creeps per turn, and it'll take them 4 turns to fully replenish. The more stuff that's damaged, generally speaking, the longer the replenishment will take. And well, pretty much you can boost replenishment in a lot of ways, such as being in encampment sense, or being in a settlement, being in friendly or allied territory, etc., etc. But now, That's all for right now, folks. So, well, I feel wishing you a good day and wishing good luck is going to be good enough. So, good night, good luck, and good luck in Total War.